Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Sci-Fi Horror and Fantasy Show podcast. I am Ronald Donahue, and I am joined this evening with my co-host, Mr. Jeff McIntosh.
Good evening from Watertown, New York.
And Mr. Mario Lazo.
Good evening also from Miami, Florida.
So the format of our show is we'll first start off with a couple discussions about a couple topics, entertainment, movie, news related, and then we'll follow up with our question of the evening. So to start off this evening, you guys, I can tell you, I'm pretty excited, at least at this point in time. I came across an article from Variety that states that there is going to be a live action Lilo and Stitch movie coming out next summer in 2025. It did have a little CGI spoiler of Stitch. And I can tell you, I wasn't all that impressed with how Stitch looked. I mean, yeah, he looks like the Stitch, and actually Disney. Reason why I'm excited is Disney. Stitch is actually my favorite Disney character. And I love the original Lilo and Stitch movie, and I love the animated cartoon series that came out. And yeah, I wasn't all that impressed with it, but I'm excited. They've already got casting in it. They've cast Lilo. They've cast her older sister, Nani, and they have Zach Galifianakis is going to be one of the characters in there, as well as with Jason Scott Lee. So. I mean, I'm excited. I'm really excited about this. I think it's a great property. I think if done correctly, it'll be a really nice family movie. What say you all?
Well, I've got to see it to believe it, because wasn't the premise part of the movie that he was a bit scary?
Who, Stitch?
Yeah.
Well, see, the thing was, okay, so Stitch's actual name is Experiment 626. He was actually created as a weapon. He's an alien. So he was created as a weapon, and because of Lilo and the love and friendship he got for her, whatever it was that had him as like a killer destroyer, it stopped it. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So yeah, I mean, no, he's not scary in the sense. I mean, he doesn't. See, the reason why I was saying I didn't like the way the CGI looked, because at least in the cartoon, what made it so funny, Lilo always used to pass him off as a dog, right? But it was this one little girl. She was so funny. She couldn't stand Lilo, and she was like, "You have a weird looking dog." It used to be so funny. But yeah, the way he looks now, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna be hard pressed to figure out how they're gonna try to pass him off as a dog. But overall, I mean, what do you think? I mean, I think it's a good idea. Like I said again, I think it's really a good idea. I think it's going to be. I'm excited so far. I mean, we never know how it's going to turn out, but I think that would be a cool property to make a live action movie for.
Yeah, I mean, they haven't done that before. Disney, at least.
What do you mean, like take an animated series and make it into a live action?
Right.
That's a good question. I don't follow a lot of Disney movies, to be honest with you.
Well, I'm sure there, but see, this has a character that's a weapon, and I'm sure they've made movies. It'll come to us here in a little bit, like Snow White. Didn't they make a live animated, a live Snow White or something around Snow White?
But Snow White is Snow White. Remember, Snow White is not, and Cinderella. Remember, these are not Disney properties. They made movies for them,
right?
Okay. But yeah, I mean, I guess they made their own versions or what. But yeah,
but they did do that. They did do Cinderella.
Okay,
and it's still the same premise. I'm wondering if they're going to continue that type of a premise.
Well, it's starting off already with the same thing, because the Disney formula. 9 out of 10 movies with the Disney has both parents dying or dead.
Tragedy.
That's the heart of Disney movies, man. I'm serious. And that's the story of Lilo and Stitch. It's her parents were killed, and it's her older sister who's raising her. So, I
Well,
mean, they got that down pat.
God rest his soul. My dad said that Disney would create horror movies. There were always witches and stuff that would scare kids. You know,
Mhm.
all these,
But that
villains.
thing, but they love. I mean, I'm speaking for me, but a lot of people love Stitch, man. You know what's so funny? I went to my doctor a few weeks ago, and the nurse, that takes you in, does your vitals and all that. I looked, and she had like Stitch Crocs on. I'm like, oh, you like Stitch? And she's like, oh, that's my favorite. I love Stitch. So it's a lot of people like him. You know what I mean? And it's not but he's not a scary character. That's the thing. He'll in the beginning he'll come off kind of like rough, and more than likely, I don't know how much it's going to be adapted from the original, animated movie. Maybe they're going to make some changes here and there, but no, I mean, I don't think it's going to be scary. I
No, no,
mean,
no. I'm not going to say that it's scary.
yeah,
You misunderstood me.
hmm
I'm saying, hopefully they'll follow the premise,
hmm
because it's a kind of a happy movie. If I'm not mistaken, I don't recall the last time I saw it. It was probably when my son was a kid or before. But I'm wanting for it to succeed, but we got to wait and hold our breath to see if it does.
yeah,
How the mechanics of it are going to be.
yeah, yeah. What do you think, Jeff?
Well, I read the article and I did see the CGI of Stitch. And I've got to say, my granddaughter, who is 10 now, I think,
hmm
real big Lilo and Stitch fan, and we've bought her some of the Disney merch. She's got a couple of T-shirts, she's got some slippers,
hmm
all kinds of stuff.
hmm
I've seen the movie once.
Okay.
When my kids were little, of course, it was Aladdin, it was The Lion King. So I'm much more familiar with these early Disney properties,
Right.
other than Lilo and Stitch.
hmm
Seen it once.
hmm
It was okay.
hmm
Would I go see a live action? Probably not, unless my granddaughter, roped me into taking her.
Okay.
But it looks like a good idea. Disney has got a kind of a reputation for wanting to squeeze every last entertainment dollar out of a property. So
hmm
I just think this is another just another version of that. Look at they had the animated Aladdin back in the sometime during the mid '80s or so, and then 2, 3, 4 years ago you had the live action version of Aladdin with Will Smith, and I believe that thing grossed over $1 billion.
Right. Right. I mean, I don't know. That's one thing I didn't check on. I never did check and see. I'm assuming I never did check to see like what the original Leo and Stitch brought into the box office. I never did check that. But just knowing Disney's track record, they don't really fund or greenlight other projects if they haven't made money off the original one. You know, because they had altogether, it was 3 different movies that including the original. So with the original one, they had let me see, 2 more that followed the original, and then they had the TV show that was on the Disney Channel and ABC Kids from 2003 to 2006. So Disney doesn't get into the habit of producing properties that are not somehow generating some cash. So I'm just figuring, we haven't heard anything from Lilo and Stitch in a while. So I think they're just going back into going back maybe to their properties or whatever, and figured out that this might be just a decent idea to bring to these kids in this generation or something.
I took a quick look, and the box office, and this is worldwide, for Lilo and Stitch when it came out, $273,147,061 across the world.
Now, did it say how much it took to produce it?
Yeah, budget was $80 million.
Not bad. Wow, that's not. They're like, oh, that's not bad at all. So they did make money on it.
Yeah. I mean, that's what, 3 times and change.
Right. Oh, okay. So see, yeah. So there you go. I think that's it. I think that this might be a nice little cash cow. And I think it's great. The fact is that they were smart. They're putting out, because the best time if you're going to put out a movie that's like, I think, kid friendly, summertime, Christmas time. That's about the best times of to put those movies out, and they're putting it out or saying they're going to try to put it out in the summer. So I think that's great. I think it might do well. So next on the deck, I read an article with Screen Rant that is saying that Henry Cavill is going to be cast to be in a Highlander reboot movie that's, I guess, going to be due for release in 2026. They have the director already chosen for the movie, Chad Stilinski. Remember, that's the guy that directed the John Wick film. And he was interviewed by Collider, and in it, he says that they're already in the pre-production stage of filming right now, but he said that shooting is going to begin in January 2025. And the chair of Lionsgate Motion Picture Group, a guy by the name of Joe Dark, announced that they're going to be aiming. Okay, let me step back. He was on an investor call, and he said that they're aiming for a 2026 release for this new Highlander reboot movie. So, what are you guys thinking? Good idea? Bad idea?
I think it's a good idea. I mean, mid-'80s when the first one came out, if I'm not mistaken, and it's time to. Hopefully, they'll do a good job. He's a pretty good actor, but I don't recall if the first one had. I think it was the second one that had Sean Connery as a co-star.
Yeah,
and then the first one, the villain, he was good at that role, and so let's hope that it turns out like the first one did, because it caught everybody by surprise. It was the main thing. So, good movie. Let's hope they can redo it in a better fashion, I think.
Yeah, Henry Cavill. I always feel bad for Henry Cavill. I think the guy's a really good actor, and I don't know. I mean, he's never really been in, other than Man of Steel. He's never really been in any like super like great movies. I think it's so messed up. I think that he was really screwed over that they never did give him a second Superman movie. And even throughout the years, I mean, they did everything else. They did all those like horrible Justice League and all those other terrible movies, Batman, Superman, but they never gave him a second film, which I never understood, because like, look, I am no fan. I do not like Superman. As a kid, I cannot stand him as far as the comics goes, but credit where credit is due. That was a good movie. And I just don't understand, which I think a lot of people don't understand, why he was never really given a shot. So if, they have the right script, it's written well. I think like what you're saying, Mario. Yeah, I think this would be a good fit for him. I don't watch that other show that he's on, that Witcher. I know it's a lot of people do like it. I've never watched it or what have you, but I guess it's kind of like on the same. Well, no, I guess it's a little bit different. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's like a period piece, whatever. The Witcher is back in, I guess, olden times, horse and carriages and all that kind of stuff. I don't know if the new Highlander is going to be like a modern take, or maybe flashbacks of when he was younger. I don't know. It didn't really say all that, but I still think it's kind of cool to bring it, bring that property back, because I enjoyed this show. I liked it when Adrian Paul played Duncan MacLeod on a TV series. That was pretty good. I enjoyed that. What say you, Jeff? What are you thinking about this?
I saw the first two movies when they came out back in the 80s. I believe it was Christopher Lambert played Highlander, and the bad guy, at least in the first one, I believe was Clancy Brown, the fellow who was one of the bad prison guards in Shawshank Redemption from 20, 25 years ago.
Yeah, that's right.
And he's always an interesting guy to watch, in my opinion. One if you take the first movie as canon, the farther you move away from that, the farther you get away from it. It's just like there's immortals, they get together, they fight, every few hundred years until they have the one guy at the end, and he gets to be kind of like He-Man, where he goes, I am the power, I'm the last immortal standing. And then by the time he got to the TV series, it was, well, yeah, he killed like the last immortal, but there are still more immortals that he's got to fight.
Right.
So, if you can somehow take all these elements and make sense of them, make one shared universe, or one universe where you can say, like the Halloween films. Halloween 1, Halloween 2 are it, but, Halloween lives on, and Halloween ends tonight, and Michael Myers' Revenge, all that stuff. Yeah, that stuff never happened.
Right.
So if you can kind of do that for the Highlander movies, where you can just say, 1 and 2 is it, but you can kind of ignore Adrian Paul, and you can ignore all these other diverse elements because they really don't exist. They don't have anything to do with what we're talking about in, 2024, 2025, 2026, whenever the movie comes out. I would like to see it. I mean, I have seen The Witcher on TV. I enjoyed the series. I thought it was pretty decent. I was kind of sad to find out that, and I never did hear the story. Did he voluntarily agree to exit the role? Did he get forced out? Was it a salary dispute? I never really heard what happened, or why he left the role. I did not see the series with the other guy who was coming in to do it. I only saw like the first two seasons with Clavel, and like those. I would like to see his take. I mean, looks like he is a big guy. It looks like he's got some, upper body strength from, lifting cows, or, whatever he had to do for Superman, so I would go see it. I would go see another Highlander movie, and hopefully the effects would be even better now. And I don't think they were that bad in the first couple movies, although I didn't like it when they chopped off Sean Connery's head.
Yeah, but didn't they bring him back though?
I think they killed him in 1, and then they brought him back in 2, but I think it was flashbacks.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Henry Cavill, he's I don't know how much he weighs, but the guy is like 6'1". He's a tall guy. So go ahead, Jim.
I'm not gonna trade punches with him, at the bar.
Okay, so lastly, we have Deadline is reporting that the director of or the producer of Ghost Rider, the guy's name is Stephen Paul. Stephen Paul purchased the different properties from Atlas Comics. The Atlas Comics that came out in 1975. I'm not talking about Atlas that Marvel Comics was before it turned into Marvel Comics in 1961. So they're coming out with I'll go into the history in just a second of Atlas. They're coming out with a movie called Devilina that is one of the original magazines, because they had, just like Marvel has like the Conan magazines and then they have the comics. Atlas did the same thing. They had their regular comic books and then they had their black and white magazines. So Devilina was one of the black and white magazines that they have. And so what they're doing is they're actually working with Paramount Studios and they're making a movie. The premise is Devilina is a woman, been kind of sheltered. She's moves to New York. She's trying to find her, learn about her past. When she gets there, she learns that she's actually the devil's twin sister, and that detectives are like watching her very closely because there's a series of murders that occurred, and all of them are kind of like linked to her in some way, shape, or form. So they're talking about this movie coming out within the next couple of years, a year or two, next year or maybe in 2026. And it's so funny. I don't know, Mario, if you remember, it had to have been now. How many years was it? Maybe about, Mario, you always say when it comes to comics, I always have these hunches. I have these good hunches. Right. It must have been maybe about 4 or 5 years ago. I heard the story about Atlas Comics.
Right.
So the way the story goes is the head publisher of Marvel Comics, and we're talking about back in the 60s, was this guy named Martin Goodman. So he had gotten word that DC's property of Justice League of America was doing really good. Their sales were really good. So he told Stan Lee, "Hey, look, I want you to come up with some characters or a series or storyline or something that's going to be just as good, or if not better than that." So what Stan Lee did, he teamed up with, one of the greatest comic book artists of all time, Jack Kirby, and they created the Fantastic Four. Not only the Fantastic Four, Spider-Man, the Avengers. So they came up with all these really great books that, we know about, even that are around even to this day. And so Martin Goodman was kind of like hands off. Because they were they were coming up with such great stuff. He really wasn't like micromanaging them or anything like that. He was letting them do their thing. So in 1968, he sold Marvel Comics to Cadence Industries. He stayed the publisher. He was still the lead publisher until 1972. But the thing was, I guess when he sold the company, the deal was that when he eventually retired, his son was supposed to be the head publisher, right? He wanted him to be put in his place. But the problem is, when he did retire, they didn't want his son, because his son didn't know anything about the business or anything like that. And Stan Lee had a proven track record with all of those different comics that he created and published. They wanted him in charge. So Goodman was like, I guess, sour grapes, decided, okay, fine. What he did, he started Atlas Comics in 1974. And it was really like, it's funny, like, it basically seemed like the company was just built on spite that he wanted to get back at Marvel Comics. Because, for one, their slogan was like a direct, even before we get to the slogan, the name Atlas was like a stab at Marvel, because remember, that was what Marvel's name was before it changed to Marvel. It was Atlas until 1961, when it changed to Marvel. But then their slogan was kind of funny. Their slogan was a new house of ideals, right? Like, this is new. You guys can keep the old stuff. This is going to be the new stuff right here. And a lot of things that he was doing different than DC and Marvel was doing was, for one, he was actually letting the artists, they were given their original artwork, which most time never happened. He was paying a lot more for the people that were coming to him. Now, there, like, a lot of the big name artists were staying with DC and staying with Marvel. But he was getting some new talent in there that were actually getting paid more than some of these artists on, like, the well-known comic books. And then lastly, they got to be the owners of their creations. So whatever they created, that was theirs. Other comics weren't doing that. And then one of the other slaps in the face too, he hired as one of the editors of the magazines, he hired Stan Lee's brother, Jerry Lieber. He actually hired that guy as an editor. So he was all about just getting back at Marvel Comics, all because they didn't, allow his son to take his spot. But unfortunately for them, the company did go out of business in 1975, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, 1975, they went belly up. Because I know one thing in particular was the fact that they were paying their artists so much money, they weren't bringing that kind of money in. They only had about 12 different, if I'm not mistaken, I think maybe 12 different properties that they had. And even like now, you can, if you go to like a comic show, if anybody has them, like I was saying, it was about 4 or 5 years ago, I bought like a lot of about 200 of their different properties. Now it's like, oh shoot, it's time for me to get some of these books graded because they might be worth something. Because when they came out with the Devilina, the magazine, a lot of the other characters that were in the actual comic books were introduced in that series. So it's just like DC has their own universe, Marvel has their own universe. Atlas, though they were only around for a year, they had their own universe as well. So that's the whole idea that Steve Paul has, is that now they're going to end up coming out with this whole new cinematic universe of all these different characters that I can promise you most people have probably never heard of these characters before. But there's some, some of these characters are pretty good. Now, a lot of them, there's a few of them that are kind of like, like, wait a minute, that's like a Hulk knockoff. Like Marvel has the Hulk, and Atlas has the Brute. It's kind of like almost a similar story or whatnot. So, but yeah, that's the whole history of Atlas. And Stephen Paul has brought the stories and everything for the different comics and magazines that they produce. So now we might be seeing in the next few years, or at least if this Devilina movie's any good, we're going to start to see a whole new cinematic universe of all these different comic characters. So do we have too many now? Is DC and Marvel enough, or is it a good idea to bring this Atlas about now, this Atlas universe about?
There's always room for good stories.
Okay.
I myself, despite having grown up on comics, never heard of Atlas until I was starting to do a little research for the program tonight. And one of the things that struck me, and I'm looking at the cover of Devilina, Tales of the Sorceress, which came out, I think you said 1975, and I'm looking at the character of Devilina, and I'm also at the same time looking at the character of Vampirella,
very similar,
created by Forrest Ackerman and Trina Robbins back in 1969. And gentlemen, I'll tell you, if that bathing suit or whatever garment that Vampirella is sort of wearing, if that is not a direct steal for Devilina, I'll eat my sneakers after the show.
Yeah, that's the same thing I was going to say. It's just synonymous with Vampirella. And then you said, I think that she lived a sheltered life and went to New York Yeah, I don't know about that move there. You know, that's that's like jumping right into the fire. It's got to appeal to a more mature young adult because I don't think you know, and you know that some moms do take their kids to see, uh those that's a movie, Marvel movies, or DC movies. I don't think they're gonna be taking their 13-year-old or 14-year-old, to go watch that movie. Kind of like in the sense of Deadpool and Wolverine. That's geared for a unique audience. So if they're gonna dress her up like Vampirella and she's going to be wearing that outfit in the movie, yeah, they've got to target a certain demographics because if not, you're not going to get the audience you want. So that's the one thing that I notice about that Devilina. You make sure who you're targeting for the audience, and people be aware of it before they release it. And I'm sure they'll put some ads out on it, and hopefully it'll be a success because as we know, Deadpool is for an adult, a mature adult audience from Marvel, and that's why they made that ton of money. So let's hope that it works out for them, and they can have some success in it.
Well, the DC and Marvel movies have a built-in audience because you've got all these people who have read Batman, Superman, Green Lantern, The Flash, the X-Men, Iron Man, or rather Iron Man, Spider-Man, et cetera, et cetera. So you got somebody who's reading a comic book and then they hear on the news, hey, you know what? The new Iron Man is going to open up. Hey, you know what? We got to go. We want to see that transition from 2D to an actual movie because it is a known property.
Right.
You look at something like Devilina. How many people, unless you're, and I'm just going to use this word with no pejorative sense at all, who was going to know this character except like another comic geek? And are they going to be willing to plunk down $15, $16 a ticket to go see a character that nobody has any idea of who she is unless they read, a bio on her somewhere and say, well, is this going to be like a horror movie? Is this going to be a fantasy movie? Is this going to be an action movie? Where exactly, are we going to be able to pigeonhole this character?
Well, Jeff, think of it like this. Now, Hellboy is very popular as far as movies go. Now, I mean, not like, bigger name, Guardians, Galaxy, and, Batman, nothing like that, but it's still a very popular character. Now, Hellboy was a comic as well before it even went to the screen. And they made decent money off of those movies as far as I understand. So maybe it's just the way that they have to market it. I don't think they can market it like, Atlas Comics anti-hero. I don't think they can do it like that because I've seen other movies that were based on comics where if you didn't know ahead of time or do some research into it, you would have never known that was actually a comic property. For example, the horror movie 30 Days a Night. I never knew that was a comic book. So I'm just saying, I think that if they market it well, if they just market this, not, maybe don't even make it seem like an anti-hero movie. I mean, if you want to throw that in at the end or near the end or somewhere like that, fine. But just kind of make it like one of those weird stories that, then she turns out, you find out who she is and she's an anti-hero, blah, 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 whatever. I think maybe that's the route they're going to have to take to just to ensure that people do go out and see it. Maybe not keep it so close to the original, like, I don't know. I think that might turn off some people anyway. If you have her, I mean, even like Vampirella, the outfit, she's had that same outfit for 40 years now, 50 years.
Something like that.
Right. So maybe if they just came out with, give her something different, give her, a costume, I guess, if they want to give her one. but I guess make it more like time appropriate or something like that.
Maybe like an Armani business suit.
Yeah, right. The devil's sister wears Prada or something.
Yeah, and you know what would also help drive the popularity to the movie?
Yeah, what?
Toys. If you have, they had like Tales from the Crypt dolls, and I guess the best example is going to be like Star Wars, because look at all the Star Wars toys that you've been able to put your hands on over the past 30, 40 years, and how popular Star Wars toys are. So if you're going to have a really popular movie, you need to have a toy line.
I mean, I guess it would depend on the character. Marvel had a character called the Son of Satan. I mean, the guy actually, had a pentagram on his on his chest, and I don't recall there being any toys out there with that character. So I'm thinking, honestly, I understand what you're saying, Jeff, but I think going back to what Mario was saying, I don't think this movie is going to be marketed for like younger kids or anything. I think this is going to be more in the lines of teenagers, adults, something like that. Now, where they could do the toys as opposed to like mass, like, Walmart, and there's no Toys R Us anymore, but it's like massive toys that you see in a store like that, amounts of toys. Probably some of these smaller companies that make like the statues and whatnot. Sideshow. Oh my gosh, I can't think of any other ones, but I know I even bought a Batman statue from Sideshow. Maybe like, because that's a lot of people. A lot of people are into that too, collecting those kind of statues of those different characters or whatnot. So yeah, I mean, I guess they could do it, but I think again, it would have to be along those lines more than, because I would really scratching my head how you would find a character like that in. Well, no, let me take it back. Let me take that back. I'm gonna take it back. You know why? Because I remember a few years ago, even in Walmart, they were selling, was that Jason or Michael Myers action figures? So maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they could do that there.
Well, there is, and I don't remember who put the line out, but there was about 15, 20 odd years ago, there was a series of carded action figures that were something along the lines of movie maniacs or maniacs of the movies, and it had like it had Norman Bates, because I really like the character of Norman Bates. I've got a couple of the carded Norman Bates figures, and I think one of them was Leatherface. So there's certainly a market for that kind of stuff. Like you were just talking about Sideshow. I go and look at the Sideshow page, probably once a week. I mean, these figures are classed and priced way out of my budget.
Yeah.
And they just had one that was a succubus, and that was somewhere between $600 and $700, and it's like, yeah, well, that would look good on my desk if I could just fit somebody to just float me that $700.
Yeah, they're extremely expensive. It's a couple different comic stores I go to, and I mean, some of these, I know one of the stores has a statue of Thanos, and that thing is like almost 3 feet tall.
Whoa.
Yeah, you'd have to take out a second mortgage to buy some of these things. But yeah, I think again, I agree with you. So we've come to the point of our show where we are going to discuss the question of the week. And the question of this week is, what is the most overrated movie of all time?
Movie or movies?
Movie. You could do movie or movies, because I have two in mind.
Okay, Fantastic Four. All of them.
But wait a minute, Mario. Hold on now. Yeah, let's wait a second. Because when we say overrated, we're talking about movies that people think are fantastic, but you don't see where it's coming from. Because nobody likes those Fantastic Four movies.
Okay, I didn't. Well, okay, that end of the question then makes a big difference.
Yeah, because everybody. Okay, I'll give you my two. The first one, I'll do the most recent one first. The most recent one is the 2015 movie The Witch, starring Anya Taylor-Joy. I to this day I do not I know some people. Oh my gosh, that movie was so scary. Oh my gosh, that was one of the worst movies. If I was in the movie theater, I probably would have got up and walked out. I think that was one of the worst horror movies I think I've ever wasted my time seeing. But again, a lot of people love that movie. I always see whenever like anybody posts anything about it or whatever, 9 out of 10 people is like, "Oh man, that movie was so good. It was so great." I don't get it. And then my number one movie, I think most overrated movie of all time, The Shining. I mean, the performances were great. Don't get me wrong. I think Jack Nicholson was awesome. Shelley Duvall was awesome. Again, that movie is I just don't get the hype behind it. You know, it was creepy. Granted, yeah, there was some creepy stuff in there. I just don't think it lives up to the hype that it's had for like decades now.
I don't know. Well, you've got to understand. I went to see it at the movie theater.
Okay.
And at that time, and Jeff may correct me or not, we didn't have a lot of suspense movie and let alone horror movies.
Uh-huh.
You had the beginnings of that Jason, Freddy, that type of movie, but there weren't a suspense movie like, and I would catalog that as a suspense, not I guess a horror movie. And that's the only reason why. And a lot of folks, I don't relate to it, but a lot of folks that were probably born and were teens or maybe young adults in their early 20s went to see it, and it brings back that memory. But if you're talking about, what you alluded to, I kind of feel the same way. The hype. It was good when you saw it back in 80 or 82, something like that?
Yeah, 1980.
You can, I guess, count in one hand because they hadn't come out yet with the Jason 2 or Jason 3 or Freddy 2, Freddy 3. So as an alternative to going out on a Friday night or a Saturday night, you went to see that movie. And kind of like the one with Christopher Walken.
The Dead Zone?
The Dead Zone.
Yeah, that I didn't like that one either.
You see, but that was some offered to those that didn't care for the first, Jason or Freddy movies. So they offered these types of movie, where you kind of go, oh, that's weird. But again, yeah, if you look at it now, or I think the last time I saw either one of those was back probably in the late 90s, early 2000s, or remember, and then I go, okay, so once is enough, and that's it,
Because even now, The Shining to this day still holds a Rotten Tomatoes scores of 83%. Wow. I'm like, oh my gosh, come on.
I like the story. Stephen King is one of my favorite authors.
Right.
But Nicholson was wrong for the role of Jack Torrance, because anytime you look at Nicholson, you know that he's going to go gonzo and go off the rails at some point. Mm-hmm. So casting him immediately, you're already thinking, you know what? I'm going to wait, and halfway through the picture, he's going to go nuts and do something.
Okay.
And so I didn't think Nicholson was right for Jack Torrance. Wendy, I thought, was wrong because, I saw her as nothing but a doormat throughout the entire movie. Mm-hmm. And in the book, she's a fighter. She's fighting to protect her marriage. She's fighting to protect her son, and ultimately, fails to protect her marriage, and Jack ends up dying at the Overlook. But you know, I don't see the hype. I don't like it. I not really too wild about Stanley Kubrick as a director anyway, so it could be that it's just like another Kubrick movie that I just I just don't like you, man.
So what's your overrated movie, Jeff?
I got a couple. The first one, and I'm going to say that I am absolutely proud to say I have never ever seen Titanic. You know, this is what happened. The Titanic went down. A bunch of people died. Now,
no spoilers, Jeff. No spoilers, Jeff.
somebody from the rich, the Gilded Age of American society is not going to be hanging out with a poor kid from steerage.
Right.
It just ain't going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So, Titanic, I know the basic story. I know the Celine Dion song. Okay, get over it. I just don't see it.
Okay.
The other one, and I had a friend of mine give me a VHS tape. This is how long ago it was. VHS tape of The Big Lebowski. This is great. This is funny. This is the greatest thing I've ever seen. And I sat and I watched it, and it was like, where is this funny? The only parts of it that were kind of funny is when, Bridges would refer to himself in the third person as the dude. That was kind of funny, but other than that, Big Lebowski is just like, I gave up 2 hours of my life for this movie.
I've never seen it. I always hear people talk about it, but yeah, I've never seen it. I've always heard people talk about it. I always, hear people. I've heard people for the quote, "It's the dude," but I've never seen it. I've never seen that movie. So Mario,
well, save your money.
Mario, bring us home, Mario. Go ahead. What is your? Have you thought of it? You got another overrated movie?
I'll stay with the ones that I said, Fantastic Four, because I was really looking forward to them. I really was, and I'm going, really? I was saying, and then they came out with the second one. I go, oh, okay, redemption time. Really? I said, come on, guys, what is wrong with you? I was just disappointed in those. Did they make a third one? I'm not quite sure if they try to revamp it and make a third one. I don't recall.
They did George Corman did a really low budget version of the Fantastic Four quite a number of years ago, and I don't think it was ever released, but
well, thank God.
You could there used to be clips of it on YouTube.
I remember the second one. Yeah, you're right, because the second one was with the Silver Surfer. And I'm going, really, you use the Silver Surfer, and it's a disappointment, And I was really looking forward to the second one being a better one. I'm going, oh, come on. It's just, I don't know. Maybe it's my own expectations that, Marvel would create something that, would wow you. But, I don't know what to say. Like I said, and that's always my concern with Marvel, and they can't say much about DC, but hopefully that you can. But Marvel has disappointed me a couple of times, and and I'm going really, and I'm really looking forward to it. And I've been a Marvel fan since the late '60s, early 70s, and this is what you do to me. And I kind of left disappointed, and I was trying to think outside the realm, outside the box. And I can't imagine, I'm not thinking one that where I was hoping that it'd be a good movie and it would let me down, in that fashion. Now, this is just, and I didn't include or think of it for other types of movies. But, Star Wars was Star Wars. Star Treks were Star Treks, and you kind of went in knowing, what was going to happen, or and if you were left disappointed, I don't know much if folks were left the theaters disappointed, but I can't think of movies that have let me down like the Fantastic Four did. Sadly, even the new revamped Batman. I liked it. It was darker. It was grittier. It left that old mold. So things are looking promising, but I'm hoping that nobody comes up with the idea of creating another Fantastic Four. I wouldn't read that article about it, to be honest with you.
Too late. That they're already in the works now.
Okay.
But remember now.
Yeah, you said something. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah. But now remember, there is hope, because this is Marvel Studios. So this is Disney, Marvel Studios. Remember before that was like Fox. Fox had that property. That was before Disney, purchased Fox. So now that it's in Disney's hands, it's because I know it has Pedro Pascal was he's going to be Mr. Fantastic. The guy, if I'm not mistaken, the guy that played Eddie in the last season of Stranger Things from the Hellfire Club, they got him as Johnny Storm.
Okay.
I can't remember who they have for Sue Storm and Ben Grimm. I don't remember. But now that it's not up under the Fox umbrella and it's up under Disney, okay, I'll put it like, I've never been a big Fantastic Four fan ever. And realistically, the funny thing is, even though they put those movies out, if we're going to go back again, if we're going to talk comic books, there's not a lot of people reading Fantastic Four. Like I say, a lot of people are not into Fantastic Four. So I think if they bring this out, unfortunately, James Gunn is no longer at Marvel. If he was there, definitely it'd have been like, okay, come on, this is going to be just like Guardians. It's going to be awesome. Yeah. But I'm sure, Disney has Marvel has their back against the wall now, because they have produced some movies that did not really go off very well, So I honestly, I'm going to give them, I think they might do okay this time. I mean, I know every other iteration they've ever did was like horrific, but I think this time they might do something good with this.
I'll let you watch it first.
Okay, well, that brings us to the end of the show. I want to thank my host, Mr. Mario Lazo and Jeff McIntosh. And next week, we're going to start off a whole month of the Halloween themes, Halloween spooky, scary, everything that goes bump in the night. We're going to start our shows starting next week in celebration of the scariest month of the year. So for everyone, come back, tune in, and we'll look forward to seeing you again. Take care now.
All right, we'll see you next week, folks. Right. Looking forward to it.
You have a good weekend.